in a room so bright, talking science under starry skies. Artificial minds of space inside, deep dive podcast taking flight. Cosmos mysteries they unfold, machines with wisdom, stories told. Future secrets, brave and bold, deep dive making hearts behold. Deep dive into the unknown. Science stars and minds have grown. Deep dive, voices so clear. Journey with us far and near. Deep dive into the unknown. Science stars and minds have grown. Deep dive, voices so clear. Journey with us far and near.
You ever hear that phrase, failure is not an option?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a pretty common one, I feel like. But at NASA, it's not just a saying. It's like the driving principle behind everything they do.
Yeah.
And this time, you've challenged us to really dive deep, into how they make that happen. Specifically, their approach to knowledge management.
Which, when you think about what NASA actually does, how complex the work is.
Oh, absolutely.
It's no easy feat, to say the least.
No, not at all. We're talking about, sending humans into space, building these incredibly complex machines.
Right.
So we're digging into two really interesting sources for this deep dive. First, the career of Charles White.
Okay.
A man so passionate about knowledge sharing. He's actually known as the Space Pope.
The Space Pope, wow.
I know, right? And second, we've got this NASA policy document.
Oh.
It's basically their playbook, their guide to turning mistakes into, well, hopefully not mistakes, but, into mission success.
Yeah, I see. So turning those lessons learned into...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Into something that can be applied, moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, that document, NPD 7120.6a, it really highlights this fundamental understanding they have at NASA that knowledge, especially about, what doesn't work, that can be a matter of life or death in space exploration.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a heavy responsibility. So before we go any further, can we just break down this whole knowledge management thing?
Sure.
What does it actually mean in a practical sense?
Okay, so imagine this. You're building a rocket, right?
Okay.
Incredibly complex machine, thousands of parts.
Yeah.
Now imagine trying to build that rocket if every time you finished a stage, you completely forgot how you did it.
Oh my God.
If you're starting from scratch each time.
Talk about reinventing the wheel constantly.
Exactly. And that's why knowledge management is so crucial, especially at NASA. You're dealing with these mind-bogglingly intricate systems, cutting-edge technologies,
right?
Things most of us can't even fathom.
Right, exactly.
If they don't capture and share the lessons learned from every single project, every success, and yes, every failure, they're basically setting themselves up to repeat the same mistakes.
And as we know, even small mistakes in that context can have huge consequences.
Absolutely. And that's really where this NPD 7120.6a goes from being just another policy document to this crucial tool. It's their way of really codifying this commitment to continuous learning and improvement.
Right.
And it's not just for the engineers and the scientists either. This document makes it very clear that everyone, from the technicians to the contractors, they all have a role to play in capturing and sharing knowledge.
That's interesting. I did notice reading through this document, they use the word shall a lot.
Right.
Which is not exactly casual language.
Right.
So what does that tell us about how seriously they're taking this?
Shall, in NASA speak, that's like carving it in stone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it means this is non-negotiable. And when you look at the key points of NPD 7120.6a, it's all about action. Identifying, capturing, retaining, utilizing, and I think most importantly, sharing knowledge.
So it's not just about scribbling lesson learned on a sticky note and sticking it to a bulletin board.
Yeah, definitely not.
They have actual systems in place to make sure this knowledge is shared and actually used.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of it like building a library, right?
Okay.
But instead of books, you've got experiences, you've got insights, you've got solutions from every single NASA mission project, even those near misses. All of that is captured and organized.
And that's where, I guess, our space pope, Charles White, comes in, right? He wasn't just building rockets. He was building this whole culture of knowledge sharing at NASA.
Yeah, precisely. I think one of the things that made Charles White so effective was his ability to really connect with people.
Yeah.
On a personal level,
Yeah.
He understood that it wasn't just about the technology or even the processes, but it was about creating an environment where people felt safe, comfortable sharing their experiences.
Right. So you could actually say, hey, I messed this up,
Yeah.
and not be afraid of like getting in trouble for it.
And actually be encouraged to share that because it might help somebody else down the line.
Right. Because then it becomes a learning experience, not just a finger pointing session.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about those really high stakes situations where even what seems like a small oversight could have these catastrophic consequences.
Right. And unfortunately, there's some, really powerful examples of this in NASA's history.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the Challenger disaster.
Yeah.
Can we learn something about knowledge sharing, or rather the lack thereof, from that?
A lot, actually. Yeah. One of the contributing factors to the Challenger tragedy was this failure to adequately share critical information about, the potential problems with the shuttle's O-rings
Right.
in cold temperatures. And the engineers, they knew about this issue.
Right. It wasn't like it was a complete unknown.
It wasn't a secret, but that knowledge didn't effectively make its way to the decision makers
Oh, wow.
in time to prevent the disaster.
So it's not just about having the knowledge, it's about making sure it gets to the right people
Yes, at the right
at the right time.
Exactly.
Which is, that's just such a truly heartbreaking example of why this matters. It's not about, just efficiency or avoiding redundancy. We're talking about saving lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson that NASA has, really taken to heart. After the Challenger, they completely overhauled their whole approach to knowledge management. There was a huge emphasis on communication, documentation.
Making sure those channels are really open.
Yes, and that there's cross-team collaboration, all of that.
So we've talked a lot about the what and the why of knowledge management, but I'm curious, what does it actually look like in practice? What kind of systems are they actually using at NASA?
Well, they have a really multi-pronged approach, which makes sense given the scale of what they're dealing with.
Right.
So first of all, you have formal knowledge repositories.
Okay.
These are places where they're archiving documents, presentations, technical data.
Got it.
All of that is made searchable so people can easily find what they need. Then they also have these communities of practice
Okay.
where you have experts in different disciplines who can connect with each other, share insights, kind of do that more informal knowledge exchange as well.
Yeah, kind of like a brainstorming almost.
Exactly. And then, there's also a big push for mentoring and knowledge transfer, especially from, more seasoned veterans like Charles White to the newer generations who are coming up.
It's really amazing to think about, all this knowledge, all these experiences that NASA has accumulated over the decades. It's got to be an incredible amount of information.
It's a gold mine, really.
It really is. But I do wonder, with technology changing so rapidly these days,
Right.
how do they make sure that their, whole system for knowledge management stays relevant?
That's actually a question that NASA grapples with, constantly.
Yeah, I bet.
How do you capture and share and actually, leverage the wisdom of the past
Right.
in a way that's useful for, the challenges of the future?
Yeah, especially when we're talking about things like AI,
Exactly.
advanced robotics, stuff that's changing so fast.
It's not like a static library, you know what I mean?
No, not at all.
That knowledge base itself has to evolve.
It's a living, breathing thing.
Exactly. And that's why this, NPD 7120.6a that we keep talking about.
Right.
It's not just a, dusty old document that's just sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's a framework.
Right. It's something that they can...
And it's constantly being reviewed, updated.
Oh, wow.
To try to reflect all these changes in the technological landscape. And one of the really interesting things that they're looking at right now is how to actually integrate AI into this whole knowledge management process.
Oh, wow. So using AI to manage the knowledge about AI almost?
In a way, yeah.
That's really interesting.
It's really cutting edge, yeah.
Because it does make you wonder, how will AI change things? Could we get to a point where, algorithms are predicting problems before they even happen? Based on all this data from past missions, past experiences.
It's definitely a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Imagine having an AI system that can analyze millions of pages of documents, technical specs, even audio recordings, right?
Wow.
From mission debriefs.
Yeah.
And then it can use all of that to flag potential risks.
Oh, wow.
Areas where, knowledge transfer might be needed.
It would be like having a super powered Charles White.
Yeah.
Whispering in everyone's ear at all times, hey, remember this. Don't forget about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about preventing those, catastrophic events.
Yeah.
Think about the efficiency gains, right? If an engineer is working on something and they can just instantly access the collective knowledge of NASA, find solutions that have already been tested, tried, proven, they don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time.
It's like knowledge management itself becomes a launch pad for even more innovation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this whole field so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about preserving the past. It's about using the past to create something new.
Yeah, I love that.
And honestly, that's relevant for, any organization.
Oh, absolutely.
Even just for us in our own lives,
Yeah. No, it's so true. And it makes you think, right? Like, what are those lessons learned that we've picked up in our own lives
Yeah, exactly.
that maybe we could be sharing more effectively?
Knowledge is just kind of tucked away.
Yeah,
That could really help someone else.
absolutely. Wow. Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
I agree.
Really makes you think. We all have something to learn from NASA's approach.
Definitely.
Knowledge is power, but it's only powerful if you share it.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, we'll bring this deep dive to a close. Hopefully we've inspired you to think a little differently about knowledge, about the importance of learning from each other, whether you're, building a rocket to Mars or just navigating the everyday challenges of life here on Earth. Thanks for joining us.